This is the You Ask, the Pros Answer podcast. Do you have questions about an upcoming exterior contracting project? We've got answers. Welcome to the You Ask, the Pros Answer podcast. Hey, welcome to the You Ask, the Pros Answer podcast. Your questions answered by the pros you trust. My name is Cole. I'm one of the hosts on the show, and joined, as always, I have with me my co-host, Aaron Rogers. Aaron, how is it going?
It's going. It's just going.
Hey, I am really, really excited that the Ravens are headed to the Super Bowl in just like a week and a few days, actually. Aaron, just one moment. Let's try this too, because full transparency, everybody, we're recording this before January 31st. So we want to do a take as if the Ravens aren't going to the Super Bowl. Hey, Aaron, pitchers and catchers report in just a couple of weeks in Sarasota, Florida. Getting excited about it. Hopefully the weather will start to get warmer here, because I am sick and tired of this winter weather. Hold on a second. I'm not one of these people that believe in manifesting things. But I'm going to wear the Ravens hat for the rest of this episode in the event that they are going to the Super Bowl. Did I ask how you're doing?
I think you did. Yeah, I just said it's going. Just
All
going.
right, yeah, that's right. All right, Aaron, did you know that today in 1865, the House of Representatives passed the 13th Amendment, officially abolishing slavery? True.
I did not know
That's
that.
true. In 1990... This is more your speed, I think. In 1990, the first McDonald's opened in the Soviet Union.
I think I did know that, actually.
I wish I had some funny joke about what they called the Big Mac there. Did you know in India they call it the Chicken Maharaja Mac? That's a true story. I've had it. It was delicious. They can't sell beef in India. It's against the law. You know, cows are considered sacred. They walk around. Yeah. This day in 1971, Apollo 14 departs for the moon. I recently watched a documentary on Netflix about Apollo 13. It was really, really well done. So if you have any interest in that kind of stuff at all, I recommend you go check it out. They used a ton of footage, and I think they like recolored it and stuff. That was really good. I love that Tom Hanks movie and wanted to kind of see how true to...
Yeah.
Whatever. This date in 1988, Doug Williams leads the Redskins to Super Bowl victory. It was probably their last Super Bowl victory, wasn't it? I'm not a Washington football fan, so...
Sports.
Yeah. All right. So that's what happened on January 31st throughout history.
And now we can add this podcast to it. So that's kind of nice.
That's true. That is true. That will probably make the history.com list next year.
I think so.
Pretty sure. All right, Aaron, the last couple of weeks we have tackled some how-to guides on some of the services that we offer at Pro Exteriors. And today I wanted to continue in this mini-series. I'm going to ask you this question, and then I want an answer. I don't want any silly business. Mm-hmm. Aaron, how do I replace a window in my house? Or how would one replace a window in my house? I need to know. I need to know right now.
Well, I guess it depends. Do you want...
Because you've got a lot of living to do?
Yes.
Do you remember that old commercial from Depends? Adult diapers?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Unfortunately. I think once you see that commercial, it's really hard to forget that commercial.
It is. All right. So it depends. What does it depend on?
So it depends on a couple of different scenarios. It depends on whether we're talking about a new construction window or whether we're talking about a replacement window. Are you looking for the most economical cost? Are you looking for the best overall solution, which may come with a more expensive cost?
I'm looking at what's going to make the most sense long term,
which is usually the option that we steer people towards. So, for those of you who don't know what the difference is between a new construction or a replacement window is a replacement window is often referred to as an insert window. Let's, for instance, the easiest way to explain it is like with a double hung window. Double hung window has a bottom sash that goes up and down and a top sash that goes up and down. If you were to remove that bottom sash, remove that top sash, the frame that is left over, a replacement window is inserted into that existing frame. So it doesn't require, replacing any of the interior trim. It typically doesn't require removing any sort of exterior siding or trim. It is a very quick install, but it has its downsides. Some scenarios, it's perfect. In some scenarios, it is not the best overall decision. Obviously, one comes with way less labor than the other. Insert windows, again, we don't typically do a lot of them. Our company does mostly all new construction windows. So you take the entire window with frame, sashes, everything, interior trim all comes off, exterior trim, all that stuff. We do the entire window altogether. So what goes into replacing a window? Let's use new construction windows as the way to go because obviously that's what we typically go for.
Yeah.
So first things first, you would remove anything off the interior. So let's say if it's in a living room, if it's a bedroom, you've got furniture in front of it, you got a couch in front of it. We're going to remove all that stuff. We're going to push that stuff out of the way. If you have any sort of blinds or you have any sort of window dressings of any kind, those are all going to get removed. They're all going to get placed off to the side. We are going to kind of cut around the paint line, around the trim. We're going to remove all the interior trim. Hopefully there's some existing insulation of sorts. Likely it'll be batt insulation. We'll remove that insulation. Then we're going to go to the outside of the house. On the outside of the house, it kind of depends on what type of material you have for your siding. If it's vinyl siding, if it's aluminum siding, we typically are just going to kind of peel all of that siding just around the window. We'll take all of that material off in order to expose the original installation flange for that window, and then we can pop the window out that way. Mm-hmm. If you have a different type of material, let's say you have cedar lap or cedar shake or hardy or some other material that doesn't really have the ability to be taken off and put back on. In that particular case, we'll do a little bit more of a surgical removal. Well, we'll specifically measure for new trim around the outside of the window and we'll cut it. We'll do kind of a surgical cut in order to cut it back where we need it. Enough for the new window to go in with whatever nail flange and flashing tape and whatever else we need. So we'll do all that. We'll take the old window out. Just like anything else that we do, once you have the existing material removed, Cole, you should know this. What do you do once you remove the old material?
You take your lunch break.
Exactly. Now that you've got the heat or the AC pumping out of the house, it's a great time to just allow some fresh air to get inside.
No, this is a time for you to look at everything, inspect it, and look for hidden damage.
You have been listening.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. So windows and doors, like I said, depending on the age, a lot of times we get water that kind of gets on the side as it's going down, and it somehow makes its way inside. So the sill of the window, we deal with a lot of sill rot. We could have some sheathing rot. I mean, a couple of different things could go on there. So we'll go ahead and do any necessary repairs at that point. It's also a great time to check the opening to make sure it is plumb and level. Level means that the bottom sill and the sides are, level. Everyone knows what level means. Do you know the difference between level and plumb?
I do.
Okay. So it's a great time to make sure that the opening is plumb as well, because we want to make sure that when we install this window or door, that it's the exact conditions that the manufacturer wants, right?
So just to make sure that I am correct, and then
Yep.
also our listeners know the difference. Mm-hmm. So plumb would be the in or out.
It would be the overall levelness of the wall itself. So if you go to the inside framing, to the actual 2x4 stud, If you go on the sill, you want that to be perfectly level. If you go on the studs on either side, again, you want them to be perfectly perpendicular, up and down, perfectly level. Plumb would be if you were to take that same level you had up on the stud this way and to put it on the sheathing on the outside, and you want that to be level as well. You can have a perfectly square and level opening, but the wall, kind of
Leaning.
cocks in
Yeah.
at an angle.
Yep.
A window is not necessarily meant to be put in an opening long term that doesn't have the right conditions.
Yeah.
We deal with a lot of out of square openings. Sometimes not plumb not quite as much, but we deal with a lot of openings that are not square. We're allowed kind of a certain level of degree of variance as far as the rough opening measurement. So sometimes, you can only put a window in a certain way, because your window also needs to be installed level. If you're dealing with an opening that's out of square, like considerably out of square and out of level, putting in a new window sometimes requires additional framing methods to get that framing square. Most of the time, we have enough play in the rough opening and the actual window dimensions itself where we can put it in there and we can kind of scoot it, shim it to make sure that the window itself is level. It just takes a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So once we have that opening measured and secured, and we're about ready to put the window in, we're not quite ready, but we're about ready. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to inspect the house wrap that's on the existing house, because even though we're putting it into potentially a 20, 40, 60, 80, 100-year-old home, we still need to make sure that we're installing it to today's standards. The window that you're installing is meant to go into an opening that meets today's standards. So most of the time we're going to be installing new house wrap on that wall. We're going to want to get it to a point where our new house wrap can go up and under the house wrap that's above it. If it's in an area where it's a 1-story home and we have soffit, we'll go from the soffit down. We just want to basically get it to below the windowsill so that we can put our new window in and we can do our flashing tape and we can tape the edges and all that stuff. Again, it very much depends on how much siding you can remove. So we'll go ahead and we'll do our house wrap. And then we're going to put the window in the opening and we're going to check to make sure it fits.
Sometimes is that called a dry fit?
A dry fit, correct. You want to make sure that the window fits into the opening, that it's the correct size, that you can shim it, plumb it, get it where you want it, and to make sure you're not going to have any issues. So once you dry fit it, make sure everything's good that way. Then you remove that, and then we're going to basically take some polyurethane caulk, and we're going to go around the exterior perimeter, just on the sides and just on the top. You leave the bottom open, okay? People make the mistake all the time to think that caulk is meant to keep everything 100% out, and they think that caulk is the solution for a lot of things, and it can be. But remember that if moisture does get in, it can come from a lot of different places. If moisture does get in, it usually settles at the bottom of things. And if you caulk the bottom of it, any moisture that ever gets behind that window doesn't have a way to get out and can typically cause a lot of issues. Okay. So even when you're putting on your final trim and you're doing your final trim caulk, you always leave like a weep hole. If you've ever seen bricks always have weep holes in them. It's that same thing. You've got to allow room for moisture to escape. So now we're going to caulk around the sides and the top of the opening. We're going to put our new window into the opening. We're going to get it shimmed on the inside. We're going to get it, perfectly level and plumb. And then we're going to go ahead and tack it in place. We're not going to drive it home yet. We're going to go ahead and tack it in place. So basically you're going to nail off your 4 corners and one in the center on the sides. And then we're going to make sure that the window operates properly. Once we know it's, good to go, it's operating the way it should be, then we'll go ahead and we'll, completely secure the window all the way around. Once the window is completely nailed off, now's the time where you're going to go ahead and put in your flashing tape all the way around the window, make sure that's all secured. And then you can basically put all your siding and trim material back into place. Depending on the type of window you have, we deal with windows that are 100% vinyl that have J-channel pockets or J pockets in them. And then we deal with windows that don't have a J pocket. You've got to put, new trim or larger exterior trim on the outside to cover up that edges.
Is there one you prefer, or is it just a...
I mean, the industry standard nowadays is I like J pocket on vinyl windows. Not every other type of window comes with the option to have a J pocket built into it. Um, I typically, if it's an older home and we're going to have issues with the siding not being perfect, like, we're going to have to kind of make the siding work. I would typically go to a larger, like a vinyl trim or a PVC trim or something like that to kind of fill that void so that we can cut the old siding back to a point where we're not going to have any issues long term, where we don't have to worry about the siding potentially running short. Usually we'll go with that. With vinyl trim, we have one that's called it's a 2.5 inch J pocket. So just imagine a J channel, but the face of it's 2.5 inches thick. So that gives us a pretty good size pocket for kind of hiding trim that might be or siding that's a little bit short, or hiding any sort of imperfections. Sometimes we deal with the old siding may be kind of discolored for one reason or another, or if the window is leaking for a long time, we have people that just go out there and add a new layer of caulk year over year over year. So sometimes we're trying to get away from old caulk lines or some broken edges, or there's a lot of different things we try to hide or at least cover with larger trim. So now that we've got the exterior taken care of, we're going to go ahead and we'll do our finished caulking as needed. Again, we usually caulk the top, we caulk the sides, we usually leave the bottom open for just moisture to escape, and then you're good to go and you can go into the interior. So once you're into the interior, again, double check that the window operates 100%. So now that we're on the interior, we're going to go ahead and insulate the jamb. Bad insulation used to be the number one insulation. It's still the number one for most things, but spray foam is typically what we're going to use. So we use a window and door specific spray foam. So it is meant for tight crevices where you don't want the spray foam to expand so much that it will actually push in the jambs of the windows. If you use the wrong spray foam, I've seen this happen Lord knows how many times over the years. People use the wrong spray foam around their windows and doors, and then they can't figure out why their windows and doors won't operate. Spray foam is regular spray foam can be rather aggressive, and it will expand in every direction. And sometimes if you put it around windows and doors, it will literally expand to the point where it'll push the jambs in and you won't be able to open the window or close the window. I've had doors do the same thing where it pushes the jamb over and the door won't open or it won't shut. You can't do that. Window and door foam isn't quite as aggressive, and it's meant to kind of only expand in one direction. It's basically the least difficult direction for the spray foam to expand. You put enough in there that it fills that cavity. It creates a nice air barrier. It kind of secures it from any drafts. Remember that this is an opening to the exterior of your home, so you want to remove all those drafts. Cut down your shims, and then you wait for the spray foam to dry or for it to cure. Most of the spray foams for window and door cure within an hour. So typically you're going to kind of move on to the next window. And then when you come back, you can cut off the excess and you're ready to go for interior trim. With interior trim, we're probably going to go back with whatever was existing. Normally, we try to always do new trim. Old trim, depending how old it is, can have multiple coats. It's not always meant to come off, especially like MDF trim. If you've ever installed MDF trim, it's super cheap. And it typically holds paint a little bit better than wood can, but it's rather brittle. And once you take it off, it doesn't really go back on the same way. So we pretty much always use pine trim, prime pine. So we'll go back with new trim. We'll get it all put in. We'll caulk it in place, and we'll go ahead and paint it. We can usually, I'll say 95% of the time, we can usually do a window installation like that without having to paint the existing wall.
Okay.
Sometimes we end up having some existing issues where the trim doesn't cover the old paint lines and we'll end up having to repaint the wall. Or a lot of times we plan to upgrade the size of the trim to make sure that it covers.
Gotcha.
Most people, the industry standard for window and door casement is 2.25. We'll usually, when we do window and door replacements, we'll go back with 3.25 trim. It gives us that extra 2 inches over the height and width of the window to kind of cover any sort of lines. It's usually a nicer look. It's just like putting larger trim around your windows and doors on the outside. It's kind of a more premium look, and it kind of avoids that whole need to paint an entire wall. That is not something that we typically include. We'll include the trim, we'll include the painting, but the last thing we want to do is repaint every wall in your
Sure.
house because you're getting new windows.
Yep.
Nor do I think most homeowners would want to pay for that. So, so then once the paint's cured, we'll come back the following day. We'll, put all your blinds and your window dressings and everything back in place, get all your furniture moved back in place, and then we're good to go.
Couple of follow-up questions, and I think you just answered one of them. Is it typically our guys that are moving the furniture, or do we ask homeowners to have some of that out of the way, or is it job dependent depending on the...
Yeah, so I would say 95+% of the time, our guys are going to be moving the furniture out of the way.
Okay.
The only times we only really ask people to move stuff out of the way in the instance that people have, let's say, some nicer items. Let's say that they have like higher end furniture or ridiculously large furniture that may be kind of just too much for our guys to handle. If two guys can grab the end of something and move it out of the way, I don't have an issue with our guys moving it. But if we look at your furniture and you've got a $20,000 dresser that has to be removed, I might have you do that. Just for, it's going to make everybody's life a little happier.
Yeah.
One little mistake and we make less than $0 on a project. I'm not really interested in doing that.
Yeah.
So let's say that you have really high-end furniture, you have really large furniture, or the only other time we really ever ask people to move their stuff is people that have a lot of stuff. Like, let's say you have curio cabinets just full of tchotchkes, china, decorative this, memorable this. We'll oftentimes ask people to kind of handle that prior to us getting there, simply because like we're all human. If we make a mistake, we'll 100% own it. But there's times where we try to lessen the opportunity for us to have that sort of impact on people. So if you got a lot of stuff, a lot of tchotchkes, a lot of higher end, expensive stuff, we'll typically ask you to move that simply because like we don't want to put anybody in that position. So
okay. This is our third in this little mini series of how-tos. This is the first project that has taken us inside of someone's home.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of precautions do we take when entering a customer's home?
So if we're going to be inside someone's home, and especially for like a window project where we're going to be in almost every single room of your home, the guys will wear booties as they are entering, and every time basically they come back into the house, they're going to be wearing booties, as well as we'll put down runner tarps. We have these little rubber back tarps that we use. They're about 2.5, 3 feet wide. They're pretty much going to go everywhere where we're going to be walking. Even if we say like we take our shoes off, pretty much everywhere in the house, we're going to have these runners. So, in the main entrance, down the hallway, in every room, in front of every single window. We don't have a lot of debris that enters when we're doing windows. There's not a lot of stuff that kind of falls in, but there'll be some stuff.
Yeah.
We don't really want to leave any debris behind, nor do we want to damage anything that you have, regardless of what type of flooring you have. We don't want to take that chance. So we're trying to, again, like every project we do, other than making your home look better than maybe when we started, we don't want to leave any sort of markers behind that let you know that we were there.
What about pets? Yeah. What's some of the advice you have for homeowners who have cats or dogs?
So cats are a little bit different. Cats, we would typically ask that you put them up in a room. I know a lot of cats like to kind of explore, and you see an open window, and that's an opportunity for them to explore.
Mm-hmm.
Dogs don't have quite the same nature about them. They don't like to explore quite as much. Most of our guys would probably prefer that you kept your dog around. The production guys probably don't like the amount of time that they'll spend loving on your dog.
Yeah.
But no, for the most part, if you're not concerned about your dog trying to escape, I don't really have an issue with people leaving their pets out. Cats are a little bit different. We would prefer, if you have a cat, that it's either caged up, or put in a separate bedroom. And please tell us if you have a cat and we don't know. It'll be one of the questions that we ask when we're going through the whole sales presentation process. We'll ask you if you have animals, because we typically do more than one window at a time. So, there may be a time, if it's during the type of season where it's not ridiculously hot and all the AC's going out, or it's like it is right now and it's cold outside and all your heat's escaping. If it's in the spring or the fall where it's nice outside and you already have your windows open naturally, we may do 3 or 4 windows at one time. It may not be a room by room type of situation. So if we have 3 or 4 windows open at one time, that's 3 or 4 opportunities for a cat to jump.
Yep.
And same way with dogs. If your dog's a natural escape artist and loves to get outside, but is not really allowed to be outside, just let us know. Like, we're willing to work with almost anybody. We're not really going to tell you like your dogs or cats need to be kenneled.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of work around your schedule to say like, hey, if that's the room you're going to put your animal in, that'll be the last room we do. We'll finish every other room and you can kind of move them over there, and we'll do those last 2 the final day, or whatever is necessary. We always try to make every project kind of the least intrusive on your lifestyle and your day to day. And animals and kids are kind of that thing. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we got to do to kind of not disrupt that. So
that leads me to my last question. Speaking of not disrupting, how long does a window replacement take? I know it's a tough question, because you could be talking about one window or you could be talking about 14.
Yeah.
We said a roof takes on average a day, siding 1 to 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the scope of the project. What about windows? What's a average project look like?
So if we're doing new construction windows, I would say an average house is probably 14-ish windows, if we're not including doors. So we can normally, for new construction windows, we can normally get in and out of a house, start to finish, 3 days max.
Okay.
If we're doing replacement windows, again, insert windows, if we're doing insert windows, 14 insert windows could take 1 day. Again, they're super, super easy, super, super quick. But yeah, 3 days normally is probably an average project. We can do it in less, but again, I'm not trying to disrupt every single room in your house, especially for projects that have to go into a second day. If I've got to do interior trim and paint, and you've got to have your blinds off and your furniture moved, I'm going to try and kind of schedule it in a way that doesn't disrupt the fact that people may be sleeping in that room, or this may be the main living area, or your kitchen, or all of those different scenarios. So, but yeah.
All right, I'm going to try something slightly different. Aaron, if I said I only had one question left and I already asked it, but I'm going to ask you one more.
Okay.
If someone is looking at replacing the windows in their house, who would you, or how would you suggest they get in touch with us?
I mean, the easiest thing to do is they can call the office at 302-664-1700. That's 1700. Or they can go to our website and they can shoot us a request online. We usually call people back, or if we don't answer the phone, we'll call people back from a web request relatively quickly. And then, it's a matter of, depending on what type of window it is, once you sign the contract and we get your deposit, it could be 2 weeks to get your windows, or worst case scenario, if it's a different brand that's a little bit more higher end, I think the worst we've ever had was 27 weeks.
Whew.
Yeah, that was during COVID, so obviously everything was a little bit more exaggerated. But it was a higher end window, very, very custom, specific grid patterns. But that was 27 weeks. The worst part about that was one window came in damaged. So we were able to do the entire project minus one window, and that window took 16 or 17 weeks, and that was the expedited time frame. So not ideal.
Yeah, so listener, that's not typically the norm, but I guess I would say windows are not like shingles where, we've got some stock or we can call a supply company down the road and have it delivered later on in the week or whatever. Don't sit on this. If you're thinking about doing the project, contact us sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, Aaron, thank you for your expertise. It's good talking with you.
Thank you, Cole.
That is all that we have for you today on the You Ask the Pros Answer podcast. Would you help us continue to get the word out about the show? The best way you can do that is to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on social media or simply tell a friend, hey, you ought to check this show out. Before we go, we want to hear from you. Would you send us any question that you might have to info@askproexteriors.com and in the subject line put You Ask. We would love to feature your question in an upcoming episode. If you are facing an upcoming home project, we hope this episode empowered you to tackle it with confidence. Remember, knowledge is power, and a little bit of research can go a long way. Until next time, happy homeowning. The You Ask the Pros Answer podcast is produced in-house by the Pro Exteriors team. Pro Exteriors is the exterior contracting division of Empire Construction Group, LLC. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal advice. For more answers to your questions, please subscribe to this channel and podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Do you have an upcoming home remodeling project? Find more answers to your questions at askproexteriors.com.